Hello, everybody, and welcome back to One Soccer Today. Another special episode for you on this program with Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson, and Gareth Wheeler, where we gentlemen will be going through the top 10 storylines from the 2023 CPL season. There will be some opportunities to take victory laps. There will be some moments of self-reflection and probably plenty of banter, because I think some of these storylines might have to do with these three over here. These three dapper gentlemen to my right on your screen. Let's start at number 10, and we are going to start, unfortunately for the Winnipeggers, at the bottom of the CPL table. It seems fitting, isn't it? A little bit of symmetry, as Valor missed the playoffs yet again. And not only did they fail to meet their objective of qualifying for the postseason for the first time, they'll be holding the wooden spoon entering 2024. Just 26 points on the campaign, Jordan. What do you think went wrong for Valor this season, and how does Phil Dos Santos, Wade Miller and company turn things around in the center of our beautiful country?
Valor. This season, in a nutshell, a lot of people talk about they couldn't score goals, and obviously that was a huge gaping issue throughout the season. They weren't lucky in terms of injuries, but I also think with the Canadian Premier League wheels we talk about all the time, you have to build a team to be sustainable, right? You see it with a little bit of York United as well this season. If you're getting players that are old, I'm not saying old players can't be productive, but I'm also saying you have to expect that your ideal formation, your ideal lineup might go there might be two guys injured. Can you still field a team if that happens? I think Valor fell to that a little bit. They really put an emphasis on their starting 11. This is my best team. But you rarely play like that throughout the season. You play sometimes with your 14th, 15th, 16th best guy, and they have to do a role and play a shift. 6 wins, 8 ties, 14 losses. Like, this was a team that just really couldn't get over the hump and really didn't have an identity for the majority of the season. They still have quality in players. Gutierrez, there's guys that you look at, Ponce, and I said Neon Gabiri is probably one of the most exciting players in the first quarter of the season. I said it a bit early because he was a bit stagnant for the last half of the season. However, there were talented players within the team. But in terms of having a cohesive unit, I think that's where they fell short. And I think for moving forward, Phil Dos Santos, you have to find a players more like a Dante Campbell that you brought in, a younger player that can stay healthy, that can give you 90+ minutes, that can play different positions. You could see with him that could bleed for the squad. If you can get a handful more of those players mixed with the Gutierrez and Neon Gabiris, all these guys could be their better self. But when you have those players and they have to make up the majority of the team, and you have maybe like 3 stars for the day, it's not enough. In the Canadian Premier League, every team has stars. It's about your bottom guy, and Valor needs to fix that. A lot of their issues as well, I don't think it's just with Phil Dos Santos. I think it's the way Valor and the way that you're recruiting players to play for that club. In Winnipeg, I could be biased because just coming from the GTA, there's a plethora of options. Having people going to Winnipeg to be at that club, you have to find a way to get the right personnel to want to play and get that club to where they need to be. And I don't think they found that. They found a few players, a couple players, quarter of them, but they need to find the majority to be those guys to really make the difference. So if they can do that, it's a good start going into next season.
Is there an actual wooden spoon? Like,
we can make one.
I mean,
They're pretty cheap at like IKEA or Dollarama.
Let's just leave it at less dull objects in Winnipeg. They need more knives, more people that are sharp, can slice and dice. That's what they need.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, Gareth Wheeler, speaking of slicing and dicing, I'm going to come back to you for number 9, because the beginning of the season, let me set up our storyline first before I get into it. At number 9 is the debut of Vancouver Football Club. I think plenty of CPL supporters were frustrated, were worried at times when the league announced that FC Edmonton was shuttering operations. What would that do to the schedule? Are we moving backwards? Not to be. Vancouver comes in, stabilizes the schedule at 8 end. There were always going to be growing pains. It was a sluggish start of the year. They had some big names, especially from Liga MX. Your Christian Maris and Gael Sandoval has come in, and it just didn't stick with some of those big players. But Gareth, as the season progressed, we saw this team gel under Ashwin Gapi, like the copious amounts in his hair, I can only presume, and play some really good football to ascend out of number 8. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. What did you make of their big season, their inaugural season, and what sort of lessons do you think can they take with them into next year?
Gapi doesn't need gel. That's all natural, and it's phenomenal. Plenty to build off of in year number 1. Great kits, by the way. phenomenal kits, nice intimate new stadium. They just need to move that tractor that's in the background. Get it out of there. I'm tired of that tractor. But they learned a lot about what it's required to win at the professional level. And at the start of the season, there was a lack of depth, a lack of stability, lack of reliable players. And too many question marks when it came to the spine of the team. Once they realized what they needed, more experience, more depth, players that they could rely upon, they got rid of players who didn't fit and replaced it with players that really kind of fit the mold more to take advantage of a team that wanted to go out and play attacking football. So, look, you have to learn the hard way sometimes, but I give them a lot of credit. They did address these needs. 16 points. It was the third most in the Canadian Premier League or fourth most in the Canadian Premier League over the last 11 games of the season. So with players like Batar, when you're going to bring in young players like a James Cameron, it can't be just young players in the team. The fact that they brought in players like Garcia, a talented player like Vasco Fry into the mix. I just thought that they learned from their mistakes and improved and brought stability as the season went on. So they have a good core, good foundation to build around now. And I'm really excited to see where they can go from here.
Well, to the other club in British Columbia, there was a nice little rivalry that formed between Pacific and Vancouver, especially towards the end when the Eagles started getting the better of the Tridents. Ollie, that's our 7th storyline for the show, and it's the one I'm going to assign to you because I know I was one of the people that was tooting the Pacific horn and banging the drum for James Merriman and company.
Yeah, you were.
Number 8, I can't count. Number 8, thank you, Gareth Wheeler. That's why we also put the banners on the screen and post, so when this host screws up, you can still follow along. Number 8, Ollie, but that doesn't take away from how I wanted to tee this up. The ambitions were high, the hopes were high, and you look at some of the numbers here, and I know that you are also producing the show, so let me read your handiwork. 7-3-1 on June 21st. To the end of the campaign, 4-4-9 before losing to Cavalry, missing out on the CPL final. Yeesh. What went wrong on Vancouver Island?
I think a couple of things you can identify. The first thing for me was there were some imbalances, some positional weaknesses in the squad that kind of reared their head as the season went on. Left back didn't really have a natural one they seemed to trust. Right wing, did anyone really replace Marco Bustos? They had a lot of wingers, but none of them seemed wholly comfortable playing on the right side naturally. And then at centre forward as well, they just struggled to get any of those guys going. Despite seemingly having some decent options at the centre forward position in terms of a regular goal scorer of the type of Warrior Diaz that they'd had the previous season. So I think those were all issues, but it went beyond that as well with Pacific. There seemed to be a bit of a mentality issue with this team. I don't know whether it was, the amount of young players in this team, which was quite a lot, or what the root cause was. But you felt like this was a team that wasn't being held back by talent or lack of ability, but more by the way at times they reacted to setbacks. When they had a defeat that was particularly hard to take, particularly disappointing. We're seeing the last one here, obviously, against Cavalry in the playoffs. But when they had a difficult defeat to swallow or a low moment, it seemed to kind of really affect them and get to them in ways that I just don't think you can allow to happen in the Canadian Premier League season, which is a long haul, it's a marathon, and you've got to stay very level, whether it's through highs or lows. So that seemed to have an outsized impact on this specific team. And they just never really turned that corner of refinding their momentum down the stretch.
It certainly makes that start to the season all the more important. If they hadn't built that cushion, who knows if they would be within grasp of Atletico Ottawa or of Vancouver with their late season push. So a good foundation for James Merriman, but I think there's going to be some questions to be asked and some self-reflection this offseason, Jordan Wilson, because they really thought that they were going to be in to lift the brand new CPL Shield. And that is what we want to talk about next, the trophies. And of course, I have to ask you, this is number 7, by the way, Jordan Wilson. I can count. As a former player, you had to watch this season, your first full season with us, and you were fantastic. Mind you, I wanted that to be one of the storylines in this show. Unfortunately, I was overruled. But seeing those players go out to compete, we've talked about the format, but what about the trophies and what that means and what that represents to you as a former CPL?
Yeah, no, it's huge. I love that there's the Canadian Premier League Shield as well. I think it embodies a consistency, longevity, and it went to the right team this year that was phenomenal and dynamite for the majority of the season, that literally grew into their role in all shapes and forms in Cavalry FC, and they deserved it. And I think when you look at the North Star Cup, it's just like we saw it in the final, just a bit of magic and also form. I think when you're looking at a Forge team That's what they had, right? But Calvary, this image right here is imprinted on my mind. And Wheels, as I was sitting next to you and KJ and watching this, I said, man, I'm gonna be the Charles Barkley of the Canadian Premier League. I'll be the guy that played 2 years and just never won, right? And there's gonna be other players coming on, and I'm seeing Kyle Becker lifting up the Canadian Premier League, the North Star Cup here, and it's beautiful to see, but it's also a bit painful, right? But sexy trophies. I love that there's 2 to play for. I love what they mean, what they meant. But this season, in terms of the format, was just phenomenal in all aspects.
Every game mattered. That's it. Great new prizes, wonderful trophies, wonderful rewards, but it's all about the games on the field. Every game matters with this new format. A step in the right direction.
And for our beloved Charles Barkley on the show, must make it even more painful when Kyle Becker's ripping into the Aaron Mills Eagles on championship match day -1 in front of everybody. You're like, Kyle.
I will say this. His Aaron Mills Eagles wasn't it because he's a year older than me, but my Aaron Mills Eagles, the 91s, they were it. I didn't want to do it. It's the day before the match. I promise you, we are legit.
Hey, when Kyle initiates the banter with the media, we're absolutely not going to say no. We love seeing the personality from one of the best ever. Don some boots in the CPL. Gareth, you just mentioned every match mattering, and that certainly was the case for Atletico Ottawa, because I think they came into this season as the regular season champions, defending that title. That was the hope, and I don't think many would have expected them to fall out of the playoff picture, let alone fall out of that group. They look so solid, but they lose some key players. Your Balou Tablas, Abdul Sissoko, Drew Becky, the list could go on. And then they had a winless September and missed. What are you going to take away from? What will you remember from this particular tumultuous Atletico Ottawa campaign?
They brought in a dinosaur as their mascot, and their championship and title credentials went extinct. That's what's going to come to mind. I thought that they were a very
still rolling back.
I thought that they were. It was a disappointing year, no matter how you cut it. But I'll take 2 things to the bank with me. One, Ollie Bassett, cash money, was incredible the first half of the season. Put his team on his back at times. So the quality that the player possesses, it's permanent. And Bassett still effective, backing up his MVP campaign. But it's the way the season ended. They went a stretch before their final game of the season, winless in 7. It wasn't just that they were winless in 7. It was how late goals conceded. They conceded in 5 of 6 games over the course of that stretch after the 88th minute. Against Cavalry, 90+7. Against Vancouver, 90+1. Halifax, 90+2 and 90+4. Valor, 90+4. And York United, the game that sealed their fate, being on the outside looking in the 88th minute. So the late show in Ottawa, for all the wrong reasons, it's absolutely going to stand out to me about their season.
And now Fernando Lopez and ownership at Atletico Ottawa made a pretty big play by re-upping Carlos Gonzalez like 7 to 10 days after the season ended. Carlos had said, I do not like to leave a project with unfinished business. And obviously that's going to be a hungry club heading into 2024. Ollie, and staying in Ontario for storyline number 5, the situation with York United. Of course, in April, it was Canada Soccer Business that took York United under the umbrella with the intention of finding new ownership. And towards the end of the year, in fact, during CPL final week, Commissioner Mark Noonan announced that a new ownership group was to be announced imminently. What that means is when you're watching the show, it might have already been announced. We don't know the exact date, but we know it's on the way. When that announcement comes, Ollie, whoever it may be, and of course the rumor mill is churning, and we love to see the CPL supporters from across the country interested in the gossip of who might be taking over. What do you think is going to be job number 1 for York United?
Yeah, let's hope that this is a real moment of optimism for York United as new leadership hopefully comes in and gives this team direction. And I think what they need more than anything, and it's difficult to achieve, it's going to take time and a lot of work and some investment, I think, in the club as well. They need real roots, wherever that is. I don't know if there's one place in particular that the league has kind of got their eye on in terms of the long-term permanent home for York United. But wherever it may be, they need to find, a home, a community that they can kind of build around. And that's felt like something that they've always has always kind of eluded them in their CPL history so far. There's kind of been a split identity. First, it was very much York region, but the team was playing in Toronto. Then they started to lean in Toronto a bit more. But the GTA is a very, very big place. I don't necessarily know that you need to look that wide for your roots and your identity. And I'd love to see this York United team. Hopefully it means a facility in the longer term as well. You know, really kind of tapping into where they think they can be based, where they think they can draw real support from. And then also on the footballing side, right? Drawing players from the GTA and from the local area as well to give you that identity, I think would be a great thing to see more of as well. So I'm just hoping to see that real clarity about what this club is going to be and look like in the long term.
And there are hundreds of clubs. Sorry, Jenko. There are just hundreds of clubs in the GTA in that radius around York United that they need to partner with. Not to get the hidden gem, right? That for me, that's not really the goal. I think the goal is to have bodies in the stadium to really build that fan base. Like I can understand places like Valor, right? Where in Winnipeg, where you really have to go into the community and kind of get people on board. But when there's already soccer communities there, I feel like it's that much easier to really break bread with fans. And I think York United need to do that to really make that step because they're in such a crucial area where it's easy to do. But I feel like even the time that I played there, that didn't seem like it was a priority, and it needs to be, because that when you build that, you have people in the stadiums, you have people coming out already. There's that culture, there's that base being formed. So if they can do that, that's a great start.
I still love watching them play. I thought they were a really entertaining team to watch. Now just more people need to show up to watch them.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say as we transition out of this, Gareth, is I think we know that there's more than just bones with this club. They have a fantastic identity. They have a great color scheme. They've got a facility that will work for them until they want to move to somewhere new, if they want to move somewhere new. We're seeing them create that youth pathway. They're doing a lot of really good things. And the GTA as a club finally has a little bit of stability in Toronto FC. And I say that with a big asterisk. But it has always been, especially in the satellite communities, very tribal. Well, this is an Italian community. This is a Portuguese community. This is X, Y, or Z. And this is how we want to play football. They need something to unify them, bring them together, because the market there is just too big and too rich in talent and passionate football people for it to not be a home run. And I'm optimistic to see what the new ownership group can do. They'll be hoping that whoever comes in and takes over the club is able to put them on a path like Patrice Geyser was able to do with the Halifax Wanderers, and that is storyline number 4. Thank you very much, Jordan Wilson. From an announcement of League One Ontario, a Golden Boot winner, a championship club, everyone was wondering just how much that was going to translate into CPL success. And they had a bit of a slow start as they found their feet and found their identity. But once they found it, they never really deviated from it, and they went on to finish tied for second. Patrice Geyser was so legendary. Not only was he nominated for Coach of the Year, he might get a rule change after him and bring in a head-to-head series tiebreaker. We'll call it the Geyser rule from here on out. Gareth Wheeler, in this, what do you think when you look back? Excuse me, I'll go to Jordan for this first. What do you think is going to be the lasting takeaway and the most impressive accomplishment from what Patrice was able to do with this club in 2023?
I think personally, there's 2 for me. We could talk about them being a possession-based team and probably the best at it for the Canadian Premier League. That's hard to do in a season where you have so many new bodies and so many new players. And also, it'd be different if Patrice Geyser already put 2-3 years in the Canadian Premier League and knew about the travel and knew the hotels he was staying at and match day -1. He was brand new. He was fresh. So to do that, if you put that in context, it was a remarkable job. Also, I think the biggest thing I have to tip my hat off to Patrice Geyser and Halifax Wanderers is that playing against them in 2022, they had 24 goals. And I keep saying this because I need to. A lot of them were also penalties that they didn't deserve. However, this past season, 39 goals for in 2023, attacking-based team. You mix the attacking base that they had with also the possession base that they owned a lot of games, right? In the beginning, they weren't closing things down and finishing games off, but they still played attractive football. Those 2 things, those are a recipe for success. And if you can keep that up, Patrice Geyser, this is a team that'll be at the top next season for sure.
Yeah, maybe you'll play under 21 players as well next. I'm kidding.
It's the off season. This is supposed to be his safe time, Gareth.
I love
fire
Patrice.
Keep going.
He helped make a market believe He also has given new hope to Canadian coaches who are working, whether it's in university or League One, that you can be a success when, in the professional ranks as well. So much positive when it comes to Halifax. See if he can hold on to Nimick and Farron. If he can, look out for the Wanderers in 2024.
Well, don't forget, everybody. Jordan Wilson has already proclaimed that they are going to win, which means if the CONCACAF Champions Cup format does not change for 25, they will be there because, gentlemen, as we all know and as we're all very excited about, the CPL has 2 berths now, potentially even a third if a CPL club is able to go on and win the Canadian Championship. But for next year, the first expanded CONCACAF Champions Cup, Gareth, we are going to have 2 clubs in it. We're going to have Forge. We are going to have Cavalry. My bold prediction on one of our other shows is that I think one of those clubs is going to win their tie and make CPL history there. But on what that impact is going to be, Gareth, what do you think its scope will have for the CPL, for Forge, and for Cavalry as they compete in this continental competition?
Merchandising, winter coats, toques, gloves.
That's right.
First, we'll get the camera shot of that one guy without a shirt on playing tough guy. No one wants to see the frozen chest, but inevitably we will. No, seriously, this is the new norm. It's a big carrot that's being dangled in front of these Canadian Premier League teams. Go out and win the league, go out and win the playoffs, and you get to play in Champions Cup. It's a big deal. You could potentially have some big matchups. I know people love throwing out Lionel Messi. Forget Messi. Like, this is a chance for more awareness, more credibility for the Canadian Premier League, more of these players being put in the shop window and being able to advance in their careers as well. So it's going to mean a lot. It's going to be challenging how the offseason plays out, bringing these players in early to play these games and then having an extended break or layoff between the start of the Canadian Premier League season. So logistically, it's going to be headaches, but this is the new normal. Like I said, and for the clubs themselves, they have to get their business done early in terms of the players that they're going to bring in. And even just as important, making sure that you can keep as many players as you can to make that transition that much easier. So things are going to get more complicated, but I think it's complicated in a really good way, really interesting way for Canadian Premier League fans.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of thing. Sorry, Ed, I was just going to add quickly. I think this is the kind of thing that encourages ambition in this league, right? And you've got 2 clubs going into it in Forge and Cavalry who have been as ambitious as any over the first few seasons. You want to be able to compete in this competition. You don't want to get embarrassed by a bigger club. It's going to drive the league forwards, I think, in terms of the quality.
Couldn't agree more. I think we all will remember the scenes from Hamilton when Canada played the Americans in World Cup qualifying and the blankets and the frigid day. We're going to have that. And I asked Ian Allison, who is obviously a big, important key player for Cavalry Football Club, said, are you going to be able to play in February on the grass at ATCO Field? And he gave me a look like, yeah, why wouldn't we? So that is the plan, which is incredible news that we will have a potentially snow-filled Spruce Meadows. And of course, things can change, but I thought that was a really cool story to share, that they are absolutely planning on hosting those games on their own home grass. Let's stay with Cavalry here, Gareth. Our second top storyline for 2023, the dominance with which Cavalry won the regular season. 28 matches. Nobody came close. They swept up at the CPL Awards. Just one of those seasons I think we'll remember for a very long time, won't we? 55 points. What do you think the rest of the CPL can learn from just how dominant the Cavs were?
Are you coming to me or are you coming to...
Yes, please. Oh, sorry. Let's go to Oliver Platt for
me.
That.
Me, right. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
I think the big thing they can learn is the value of patience in a lot of different ways. Because this was not a team that came together really quickly for Cavalry. It wasn't like a one-year project. This was something that I think had been in the making for a few years now. And you can look at that on a collective level. You can look at it on an individual level as well. Ali Musi was in this league in the first year, and he was kind of in and out of the team at Valor, went abroad for a little while, didn't play in 2020. And then it took 3 seasons, including a major injury, for him to really build up to the level that he's at with Cavalry now, where he's a player of the year contender. Dan Klomp, again, this is a player who's been in the league for a while now. He's played a lot of games for Cavalry over 3 seasons to become the player he is now, that again is an individual awards contender and wins multiple awards this season. Leads the team to the CPL Shield and to a North Star Cup final, a CPL final. So I think this is something that has really been, as much as it sometimes feels like teams kind of come together overnight and get all that momentum in the course of a season, This is something they've been building over 2-3 seasons, maybe even longer than that when you look at Tommy Wheeldon Jr. in that post. And I've got a lot of respect for that, for that kind of patience and team building and staying the course. They did it within the season, but I think over multiple years now as well, and built a team that, like you said, that was just totally dominant in the regular season this year and better in the playoffs than they've ever been, and so close to doing the double.
And they actually beat Atletico Ottawa once this season. What? What? Heyo! Look, they were the best team. They're the best story of the season for me. Best team, ran away statistically in every department, wins, goals scored, goals against, goal differential. They are the story of the season, and they're a perennial powerhouse. And Tommy Wheeldon Jr. changed this team over the course of the season. We'll see what the next wrinkle is to add to the equation. But in terms of selling on players, bringing in players, giving opportunity, keeping players working for the club, they are the model. You know, Forge is all the titles. They're right there as well. But what Calgary's doing in that market, I mean, it's sensational. It's great for the league.
And at times it can feel a little bit hollow when you hear coaches say, well, no one's paying attention to the accomplishment that we had. Pay attention to that. Don't take your attention from this. Come on back over here to where we dominated. But I think this year, more than any, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. is absolutely right to be able to say, look, over 28 games, we took care of business more than anyone to the span and degree to which they did it. And it was fantastic to see, as we already talked about, the CPL Shield and the CONCACAF Champions Cup berth. I do not know that we'll be able to see that level of dominance, especially to close out a season again. And it was a massive accomplishment for them and a thoroughly well-deserved honor.
The final was just a bonus anyways.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up
to me. He knew
because
in the end it was Forge season, so the final was a bonus.
He did, but I think one of us on the show might have forgot about Forge season, and it might have been you, Mr. Wheeler, because before the final, we asked you to put on some hats. To be fair, I would have put on the cowboy hat too. Jordan Wilson put on his hard hat, and he got it right because it was still Forge season, just as Jelani Smith and Benny Badibanga told us after the show. But of course, that has to be our number one storyline of 2023, the CPL final in Hamilton. Forge wins for a fourth time in 5 years. The home team finally gets to celebrate on their home turf and some memories to last a lifetime. Jordan Wilson, you've been quiet for a minute here, so let me give the first word to you because you knew it was still Forge season.
I felt it. Granted, I will also go on record by saying the story of Calgary winning at Tim Hortons Field would have been a better story for me personally. That perfect season, right? To be that good for that long in 2023 and then go and beat Forge at home would have been phenomenal. But I knew that Forge were going to show up like they do in the nick of time. Look, it was a hairline though. It wasn't like Calgary had a better side for the day. They scored that beautiful goal by Musi. I said, if Musi plays like he can, a 9 out of 10, they're going to be victorious. That memory, I think, of the finals will be the goals that were scored. I know it's easy to say, but Musi's strike is not a normal fit. That is very difficult. Most people are hitting that straight to the keeper. Benny Badibanga, that is very difficult to do. And then Tristan Borges, that's literally out of this world, right? To do an Olympico in the finals, to try that, to see Marco Carducci off his line and hit that. I mean, that's going to be great. I think also, to cap it off, what will be a memory of mine is Jelani Smith, who works for Forge, is a dear friend of mine. I tried not to make eye contact with him when they were celebrating and they came close. I was looking other places on purpose. As soon as he locked eyes,
they were waiting for it.
He's like, because he said, oh, man, I'm going to get on the stage. He's going to do all this stuff. And there's different Jelanis. There's humble Jelani, right? When they're losing, I don't hear from him. But he gets vicious when they win. He locked eyes. I didn't even say come over, but he said, this is my time. He came over. I said, oh, boy. And I threw my boy Wheels under the bus a little bit, brother. Thanks for forgiving me.
A little bit.
It was a crazy time.
It was well-deserved. Gareth, because I'm nice, I want to give you the final word. We have about a minute here, so I want to get some thoughts on you.
It wasn't just that Forge won. This is a dynasty. What a story. First team to win at home. Incredible scenes. We were waiting for that moment. Big crowd. A great crowd that was into the game, and the way that it played out in the most dramatic, spectacular way possible. Bottle that up, inject it in your veins, and let's keep that pumping through 2024. Ultimate high. Great way to end the season.
Incredible final, and I have so many good memories from it, but my favorite might be Wheels turning briefly into a cowboy when making his prediction, standing up, almost breaking the desk. That was an all-time CPL TV moment for me.
Yeah, if the desk
Seasons
would have
change.
broke, we wonder why we're never given a desk. Is because Gareth is an absolute menace and liability when desks are around, just pounding on him. But luckily, it
Bills
stood.
Mafia.
Gareth Wheeler to the
Inside
Bills
tables.
Mafia. Breaking news to end the show. What a season 2023 was. The top 10 storylines of a remarkable campaign. We can't wait to see what 2024 has in store.